What is up, my Pika crew? This is ThePikaWu, and welcome to another Pokemon Wi-Fi battle. Today I've got a UU tier match against the Killer Nacho. Now, I don't know how many of you guys know who the Killer Nacho is, since he is a pretty old school YouTuber, but believe it or not, he was actually the inspiration to my channel. He was the first Pokemon YouTuber that I was introduced to, and if you haven't checked out his channel already, I highly recommend you to do so. Also, if you do enjoy this video, please be sure to like this video, and it will definitely help out my older viewers to find my newer videos. So anyways, I am also very excited to present to you this new team preview analysis. I've been working really hard to come up with ways to make this section of this video more dynamic, so I hope you guys enjoy these visual changes. If you have any recommendations or feedback for my future videos, please let me know. And yeah, I basically read every comment, so if you do have feedback, it would be really appreciated. By the way, this video is going to be in the perspective of my opponent, since somehow I did lose the video file, so the Pokemon that I am using are actually on the opposite side of the match. Now, going into the team preview analysis, our teams are very similar in construction. We both have that Fire Grass Water core, which I guess seems to be a very popular choice nowadays, since in the NU battle that I previously posted, my opponent also had a Fire Grass Water core. Now, both of our teams are balanced offensive. You can see my opponent only having 2 dedicated sweepers, his Salamence and his Darmanitan, while the other 4 Pokemon are a mix of support and attackers. Now, on my side of the team, I have a more offensive team. All of my Pokemon are invested in either special attack or attack, except for my Exeggutor. And although my Pokemon are naturally bulky, this does pose a problem because I don't really have a Pokemon that I can safely rely on to take multiple strong hits. Since most of my Pokemon are really slow, I ended up using Bronzong as my 6th Pokemon to actually set up Trick Room. So it's not really a full-on Trick Room team, but I just added on a Trick Room user last minute because it seemed to fit my team anyways. So that's basically the construction of my team. Now, in terms of choosing my lead Pokemon, my main 3 potential leads are Empoleon to set up Stealth Rocks, Bronzong to set up the Trick Room, or Rotom Heat since it does have that Volt Switch and it can switch out against Pokemon that have a matchup advantage against it. Now, I thought Rotom Heat was the optimal choice because it can live any hit from all of my opponent's Pokemon except for the Blastoise. But if he does bring in Blastoise, I can outspeed and deal super effective hits with either Volt Switch or Thunderbolt. I actually don't carry Thunderbolt, so just Volt Switch. And Rotom Heat does have the matchup advantage against all 3 of my opponent's potential leads, his Espeon, Bronzong, and Blastoise, as well as also his Darmanitan too. And those are his really strong lead candidates. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this battle. So I'm going to lead off with a Rotom Heat as my opponent leads off with Espeon. And right off the bat, I do end up choosing Overheat as my first move because it deals a lot of damage against his Pokemon, except for his Darmanitan. Now, looking back, I don't think that this was a particularly smart play because there is a high chance that he is going to bring that Pokemon in. And I think honestly the most optimal play would be to go for that Volt Switch, and if he does indeed choose to bring in that Darmanitan, I can bring in my Rhyperior, who does have Protect and can scout what that Darmanitan wants to do. But thankfully, he's not a Flash Fire set. I'm able to deal a lot of damage against him before I'm forced to switch out eventually. This Darmanitan here, it goes for the Flare Blitz, and it does a huge amount of damage. So that reveals he's a Choice Band set, which is extremely dangerous to my team, but after the Volt Switch damage with my Rotom Heat, Stealth Rock should be able to take out that Darmanitan, and that threat is going to be taken care of. So because the opponent is locked into a Fire-type move, I switch into Rhyperior, and I do go for the Mega Horn on the switch, mostly because it deals neutral damage against his 2 potential switch-ins, his Bronzong and his Blastoise. So Blastoise is eventually going to force me to switch out, since he does have a 4-time super effective Water-type move, but I am going to choose to stay in, go for the Protect to scout for that Aura Sphere, to see if he has that move and if he wants to predict my switch out. Now I'm going to stay in the following turn and go for the Earthquake. I was actually predicting him to switch up moves or double switch, predicting my Empoleon or Exeggutor, since I already saw he clicked Hydro Pump earlier. People tend to be aggressive with offensive Pokemon and generally conservative with defensive Pokemon, so I wanted to take advantage of this and kind of make a contrarian play. Now this would heavily cripple his spinner if I could pull this off successfully, but he just stays in and goes for the Hydro Pump, a great play that will take out my Rhyperior, a huge threat to my opponent's team. So now I'm going to bring in Empoleon to force my opponent's Blastoise to switch, so I can freely set up those Stealth Rocks. I actually didn't think my opponent would bring in Espeon because it can't really hurt Empoleon after switching in, since I do resist that Psychic. So I was actually expecting the Shaman to come in instead. However, again, my opponent outpredicts me, and he's able to use my rocks against me. This turn, I'm going to go for the Hydro Pump because it should deal a ton of damage against everything, and if he does decide to stay in with his Espeon, it's going to deal a massive amount of damage. And I'm going to go ahead and go for the Ice Beam the following turn because it has greater accuracy, and if he does bring in the Shaman, I can nail that. So that's exactly what happens. Finally, I can nail one good prediction, and I am finally shifting the momentum to my favor. So this Shaman shouldn't be able to take me out in one hit because he's not Life Orb or he's not Choice Spec since he revealed the Leftovers item. So I do want those Stealth Rocks up, and this is finally the perfect opportunity to set that up. And that means that Darmanitan is no longer going to be a really big threat. I'm going to withdraw here because I do have enough HP to survive one more Stealth Rock switch in. And this is the realization that at this point I realized that Empoleon is going to be a giant threat to my opponent's team. If I get this Shaman weakened enough, and if I get that Bronzong taken out, then I should be able to sweep the rest of his team with Empoleon as long as I do have that Trick Room up. So the idea here was I was actually going to just bring in Bronzong because I can resist that Seed Flare and try to shift the speed to my favor through the Trick Room. And using Trick Room, this gives me the opportunity to kind of change up the momentum and kind of go more on the offensive rather than go on the defensive. And here, I really wanted to go for the Explosion, but I was almost certain he would bring in that Bronzong who could take that Explosion and kind of stall out my turns by being a defensive wall. But he actually stays in with his Shaman. And the reason why he stays in is because he reveals here he's a Sleep Talking set. I thought he was just rest and 3 attacking moves, so that once he rests he can switch out. But this actually thwarts my entire plan because I brought in Exeggutor against the predicted Bronzong switch in, so I can use Sleep Powder and put that Pokemon to sleep. But my opponent just uses rest, stays in, and actually reveals that he has the Air Slash, which is going to be dangerous. So this puts me at a very difficult situation because I can bring in the Bronzong again, but I need that Bronzong alive and have at least a healthy amount of HP to set up Trick Room again later. So I need as much HP as possible to take hits from my opponent's Blastoise and Salamence. I also want damage on the Shaman, so I can take it out with an Ice Beam from Empoleon. So I'm worried that if I go into Dragalge, my opponent might switch into Shaman, or switch out Shaman, and I won't get any damage on it. So that's why I'm actually staying in with this Exeggutor, even though it seems like a pretty poor move. So right here, I'm just continuously going for the Psychic to hope for either a special defense drop and generally just good damage. So 2 Air Slashes I know will kill me off, but what I was hoping for was that with the Sleep Talk randomness, it would allow me to get 2 Psychics against the Shaman before I die so that I can guarantee my Ice Beam from my Empoleon to take it out later in the match. But unfortunately, I'm only able to land 1. After my Exeggutor gets taken down, I'm going to bring in my Dragalge because it forces my opponent's Shaman to switch out so he won't be able to heal up anymore. And if he decides to stay in, it's going to take a Draco Meteor to the face. Now, his switch in, and his basically only switch in, is his Bronzong, because it's his only Dragon Resist, and Draco Meteor, despite its resistance, should deal a ton of damage because of the adaptability ability. So, this is really great because like I said earlier, Empoleon really can sweep my opponent's team, except for his Bronzong and his Shaman, and being able to weaken his Bronzong with 2 Draco Meteors is really crucial for my Empoleon to just clean up with a Hydro Pump. But actually, he surprises me here, and he actually goes for the Explosion. Now, I actually can't really complain because, like I said earlier, Bronzong is a pretty big threat to my Empoleon potential sweep. But since he was already low enough, it was a great play on my opponent's part because he can basically remove my Dragalge from play. And that is actually going to be pretty crucial later on. So with both of our Pokemon taken out, I bring in Rotom Heat on the blind switch, which means it's the last use of Rotom because of Stealth Rocks. And that the reason why I did this was because it guarantees 1 kill, either his Blastoise or some sort of death fodder. So later you'll see that this is kind of a poor choice because I end up losing my Rotom just to kill basically a dead Espeon, right? Because this Espeon just has 7 HP. And that leaves me with basically just 2 more Pokemon, my Bronzong and my Empoleon. Now with my Bronzong, I can live any hit against any of his Pokemon, and I can just go for the Trick Room, and Empoleon can kill his Salamence and Darmanitan with Ice Beam, and I just really have to worry about his Shaman. So with Stealth Rocks up, it should be a guaranteed kill, looking at the damage from the previous Ice Beam earlier when I had that Empoleon Shaman matchup. But my opponent is really smart here, and he just goes for the Rapid Spin. And that takes away that extra 12.5% I can get on that Shaman, and this is huge, right? So I'm not actually sure anymore if I can take down that Shaman. So I'm just going to go for the Explosion here against his Blastoise, and basically the moment of truth is, once he brings in his Shaman, will I be able to take it out? So going into this, my opponent made a bunch of smart plays. He eliminated my Dragalge, so that means that I must rely on my Empoleon if I fail to take out all his Pokemon with Empoleon. I don't have that Dragalge to kind of support him. So this is it, right? Empoleon comes in, he brings in his Salamence. If he does have the Yachi Berry, he can probably live in Ice Beam, but he actually doesn't carry the Yachi Berry, and he doesn't have priority, so I can take that out. And he has 2 Pokemon left, and Almost Dead, Darmanitan, and his Shaman. He is going to bring in his Shaman. I don't get that Stealth Rock damage, and I am going to go for that Ice Beam. And will it kill? This is the moment of truth. Unfortunately, he is going to live with just a slither of health, and he's going to take down my Empoleon. My last Pokemon is that Rotom Heat, and because I brought it in earlier on, that is going to get taken down to Stealth Rocks, and that is going to be the game. So I hope you guys enjoyed the battle. Though I lost, I think the best way to improve is to honestly lose more and understand why I lost. So at the end of this match, well, I guess right now I'm going to kind of give some key takeaways of what I've learned from this battle. So I realized that I often make risky plays, for example, staying in with that Rhyperior on a potential Hydro Pump, and I think I need to think about moves in terms of risk-reward. And the reward for staying in doing 50% with Earthquake against his Blastoise doesn't really outweigh the risk of losing my Rhyperior. Another thing I have to consider is exploiting kind of this information asymmetry. Most players kind of assume the Pokemon I carry are the standard, more popular sets. In this match, Empoleon is generally assumed to be specially defensive rather than offensive, and therefore, my opponent felt comfortable bringing in that Espeon against this Empoleon, even though it can't really do much damage against it. Lastly, I think I need to think of conservation, conserving Pokemon's HP as much as possible, since conserving either the Rotom Heat or the Rhyperior or the Dragalge, either one of those 3, and not bringing it out and losing it, immediately, that would have just enabled me to win the match, and that was the key difference between a loss and a win. So anyways, those are my key takeaways. Hope you guys liked this battle. If you guys did, feel free to like, favorite, and share this video to others to let people know in the community that I will be posting actively again. And if you're a newer viewer, if you do like my commentary, please be sure to subscribe. So this is ThePikaWu, thank you for watching my battle, and peace out guys.